What's happening?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not so sure myself.
Okay. Tell me about it.
I guess I've just been curious since I've been watching you lately. But I guess I do have questions, but now that I'm here, it's like I don't really care about the questions.
That's okay also. Doesn't matter either way. Although I guess if you do have questions, we can get into that, or you can talk a little bit about background. Sometimes that's useful to get the conversation rolling.
Yeah. Like, hmm. I guess background is I got into spirituality because it helped me fall asleep when I was little. Like 2006-ish. Like I listened to certain people like Eckhart, Adya, and Gangaji because it helped me fall asleep.
Got it.
I didn't really believe what they were talking about. It helped me sleep. So yeah. And then I guess 3 years ago, dang, it's I don't know. Like I used to have really bad anxiety. It made me like kind of a shut in. I didn't do much. And for some reason, 3 years ago, I was at the point where basically I was at the worst point of my life and the anxiety just kind of vanished. And I couldn't tell you why.
Hmm.
Like I was really sick and I was like in the worst physical and emotional pain that I went to bed just going, if I died tonight, I'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I my anxiety just disappeared.
Yep. That fits pretty well.
And then last year I went to, well, not my first, but my second retreat ever. Like the first one was a decade ago when I still didn't believe what people were talking about.
Hmm.
And last year I went to one, but I felt like it was kind of a closing because I was like, this is probably the last spiritual thing because I'm pretty sure I can close the book. I don't really get it. But when I got home, it all just kind of clicked.
Hmm.
And then for about, I'd say from last May to this January, it just felt like there were exactly zero problems anywhere. Even if I had problems, they weren't problems.
Beautiful.
And then from January until May again, it kind of alternated to I was really blissed out to in immense pain.
Hmm.
But for the past few months, everything's just kind of normal.
When you speak of pain, what do you mean exactly?
It was like both physical and very energetic. Like I couldn't tell you why I was in pain. It was just like everything just felt overwhelming.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
only lasts for like a few days at a time, and it would just go away.
Yeah. Beautiful. Sounds nice that you're able to at least find some sense of equanimity. And
Yeah,
I know we're using terms, whatever that means. It sounds nice that you're feeling feeling pretty good, or there aren't problems.
yeah. Even when there are problems, it doesn't feel like a problem.
That that describes this pretty well. Yeah. It's also like even when there is an outward no, um, it doesn't feel like a no.
Yeah, I guess that's something we can talk about. There's slight resistance, but at the same time, it doesn't really bother me. I don't
Okay.
know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, for well, let's just. I'll point this way. When things become so intense that there's a shift, that's kind of um, it's just a big clue because whenever you were experiencing this intense anxiety and you went to bed one night and you didn't really care if you died, that's very clearly an aspect of this because something seems to lose reference there, and upon losing that reference, there's a there's a realization that shows up. um it can be, it doesn't always have to be that way, but that is a really powerful aspect of this for a lot of people, especially when it comes to deeper stage. And once again, those are just terms, but as things unfold, in terms of resistance or avoidance or hesitation, those tend to be reactionary. They might not always make sense. There might not be a huge reason behind it, doesn't really matter. It's just if there is a sense of no or rejecting something, there's a good chance that that's where any kind of identity or the one who suffers is lingering.
Yeah, that's making sense. Viscerally, it's making sense.
Yeah. Anything that's conceptual in this realm, it's just a breadcrumb. It's just a clue. And as long as those things aren't grasped onto too tightly, the very firsthand experience will show you everything. So it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. All that really matters is that you know what a strawberry tastes like.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, of course. And it sounds like you do, which is great. So let's talk about the no.
I don't know. Like, there isn't like, I don't know if there's a mental no, but it definitely feels more physical. Like, it's like there's a sense of not wanting to completely engage.
I get it. It seems like anything that's somatic. So you're talking about it's like a physical. We'll just say somatic. That usually means there's a physical aspect that doesn't seem to be paired with anything thought oriented. It's likely that there is a thought there, but it's just what we would refer to as a whisper. It's a very low level thought.
Yeah.
So the only real way to come in contact with that, and just so you know, that low level thought is a belief. It's been there for a very long time. And so it's almost like a thought that's been on repeat. If I were to put a fan on in the house, like a box fan, and it's just blaring for 6 months and somebody suddenly unplugs the cord, the vacancy of that sound becomes almost deafening, right? That's what it's like to come in contact with these whispers, these low level thoughts that maybe we don't cognitively perceive, but they're definitely there. So the only way to really start to reveal that is rest in that which feels uncomfortable. And I know that probably sounds like it sucks, because in a way it does. But I think since you've already had some sort of revelation, being in the midst of difficulty or struggle, it might not be as challenging as it would have been previously.
Yeah, things are a lot smoother. I don't want to say easier, but they're smoother.
Yeah.
Like, it can be difficult but smooth.
Let's just say it's more effortless.
Oh yeah, that sounds a lot better.
Yeah. This clarity just we never end up at a platform where we're done, but there is seemingly a place like do you know the whole myth of Sisyphus?
I've never heard it, but I'd like to.
So Sisyphus, it's a Greek myth of this particular character that was punished by the gods to push this giant boulder up a hill every day and start over every day. And Sisyphus is often used as a metaphor for what it is to be a human being and live through life, working day in, day out, and apparently getting nowhere, right? There is a point, though, where Sisyphus pushes the boulder over the crest of a hill. And once that happens, that boulder begins to roll down entirely on its own with no effort. So this exploration, it will get to a point as you stay vigilant and aware, and you bring attention to the places that are begging for attention. It will get to a place where you don't have to do a damn thing. And that's what we would pretty much call liberation. And then it doesn't really matter how it shows up, and it becomes unpredictable, effortless, and we just find ourselves kind of in some never-ending flow.
Feels like there's no choice at times.
You got that. That's it's pretty accurate. No choice at all. It's weird though, because in the initial stages of this kind of stuff, since we're still playing in the realm of identity and ego, there does seem to be some choice, cause and effect, but that doesn't mean that it's actually true. It's just what we're oriented to at the time. And eventually it becomes really clear, no choice, no agency, no doing, just attention. Mm-hmm. And at first, when one of the things that's often pointed to is notice thoughts, move to sensation, notice thoughts, move to sensation. It feels like a little bit of doing, like an agency. Like I notice a thought that my attention's here, and then the attention's brought here. and then the attention's there again, and then it's brought here. Over time, what we realize is it's not that attention's been moving at all. That's still a little bit of a interpretation. It's that attention's actually extremely wide, and we just didn't see it for what it was yet. In other words, attention's in both places at the same time. It's like this superposition of attention. So with that, wherever the no is, there's a small level of agency of allowing attention to be where the no is. Because if there is a no, it probably arises on its own. And if you just allow the attention to be where it's arising, instead of moving into this state of resisting it, avoiding it, or hesitating around it, which is actually, that's the action, that's the doing, we would consider this stillness. So to become like really sage-like with you for a moment, I have a flower that is right here and it looks like it's about to bloom. What do I do to make it bloom?
Can you make it?
No, you can't. We just allow it. We don't wait. That's still a small level of resistance. We just allow it to be what it is in the moment. So that's the very same thing with these places that you might discover the no. It's an allowance because there's part of us that wants to withhold from something that's unfolding on its own. And if we don't fall for that reactive behavior, we allow that no to unfold on its own, and there's becomes a clearer discovery there that there's no there in the first place. It just seemed that way. So yeah, it's a lot of paradox. Seems like the foundations of this reality is paradox. So yeah, even using language, even having these conversations can become difficult because it can't really be defined. Yet there is something that seems like a very human pattern in this process. And that's probably because we all share identity. It's not actually individualized in the way that it makes us think it is. It's probably something that's more collective than anything else. And for that reason, the pattern seems to remain the same.
Yes, I do have a slight question, going back a little. Would actually trying to brute force it also be like a subtle form of resistance because you're trying to get rid of it?
That's right.
I don't know why I asked that, but yeah, I guess I just did.
It's actually a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of people will enter into a state of, oh, I can force this to loosen. Hear how strange it is. Okay, so the mind and our perception through mind is extremely binary. And you've probably discovered how it's like good, bad, right, wrong, happy, sad, pain, pleasure, all these things that seem to be playing opposites. And it's just, we experience one or the other, like basically like ones and zeros, like a computer itself. And that is only a sliver of this reality. This cause and effect relationship with everything is only a sliver. There seems to be way more to it that we don't seem to be able to perceive at all through the mind, yet it is perceptible. It is possible to experience it. Strange. It's kind of a strange experience altogether. So outside of the mind, what is the experience? Well, it's unpredictable, can't really orient to it. It seems spontaneous, mysterious, and it even upon telling a story about a memory, it's already false as soon as we enter into the conceptual. So strange. It's almost like fractals of things being created and destroyed simultaneously all the time, just everywhere. And this is why we talk about this very special place. It's a special temporal experience that we call the now, the here now. In that space, what tends to happen is we end up with a vacuum of thought. And in a vacuum of thought, there's still something here to experience something, but it isn't done in the same manner. It's not a cause and effect relationship, or it's not based on finding or seeking an origin. Something shifts in that space. So brute forcing is definitely a form of resistance, because whenever we push for something, what's happening is we're still falling into the trap of duality. Here, instead of pushing for something or becoming completely complacent and not doing a thing, there's something kind of in the middle where it's like if this were a coin, we could flip it up on its end, somehow balance on the very edge of that coin, somehow experience both of these things simultaneously and neither of these things simultaneously. It's a, that is the paradox. That is non-duality itself, whatever this reality seems to be. So what that would look like is allowance isn't quite doing nothing, because doing nothing has a tendency to have an avoidant energy to it. It's about full immersion and entering into a space of non-reactivity. So stillness is interesting because it's as if we're fully aware of the sensational space and we're fully aware of thoughts, but we are not compulsively reacting on any level at all. We just notice. So outwardly, and maybe initially, it seems like a non-doing, a doing nothing, but it's still being in the midst. It's still being fully immersed. It's not being closed off from the experience. So we have to be still engaged in this emotional space. A lot of people, and I'm calling it emotional, it's just sensory. These are sensations. They don't have any meaning. So anxiety itself, there's an interpreter, there's a middleman there telling you, oh, this is anxiety. But beyond that interpretation, what are the exact sensations? What is that experience? And how thoroughly can you allow that? There's some type of magic that tends to occur in that space. That's stillness. Most people become acquainted with stillness through meditation. Meditation feels like a non-doing, but it's not a complacency. It's actually full engagement, because in that space, our attention widens. We become really aware of these sensations and we become aware of thoughts. Maybe not initially. Sometimes people just get trapped in thought in a quiet space when they meditate, but over time, we start to be able to watch the thoughts from a distance, seemingly. And really the only way to do that on a human level in the game of duality is to enter into a sensory space. In other words, be so fully immersed in whatever the sensations are that the thoughts have nothing to stick to anymore. And even then, there's still some duality there, but for some reason that space takes us deeper on its own. We no longer have to engage in a practice. So just to reach a state of stillness, perpetual stillness, will pretty much reveal everything on its own. It is the boulder over the crest of the hill. And what the no is, here's the most interesting part. It's a seeming disruption in stillness. That's it. There's a part of us that doesn't want to be with that. Or we can put it this way. We tend to accept what we like. If you like something, you accept it. You bring it in. But if we don't like it, we go, nope, pushing it away. Now imagine that you could accept 99% of this universe and you're just in love with it, but there's that 1% that's still a hell no. That hell no, as you're pushing it away, is like a laser beam through your hand because it cannot be pushed away. This would be like water attempting to be something other than water. It would be, the identity is essentially the ocean suddenly standing up and saying, I'm so pissed off that I'm wet. But you're the ocean. That's kind of what it's like. It's this weird sense of a vacuum in a space that doesn't have a vacuum.
It's pretty clear to me.
So, yeah, those no's are going to be signposts for you. And you don't have to go find them. You don't have to brute force. What it is live your life, live as big as you can live with. And anytime you encounter what seems to be a limitation, you live now entirely within that limitation while examining it in a very just open, honest, and sensory-oriented way. Where's the boundary? And here's what tends to happen. When we live in the midst of a limitation, what we find is the only limitation was the thought that preceded that experience, the thought that kind of gave us referencing some past event that preceded that experience. And if we're in the midst of it and we're examining it, we just don't seem to be able to find a boundary there at all. It's like, to be in the limitation, we discover there is no limitation. And then you just continue living your life. You live. And then you run into another limitation. Naturally, you'll just enter into that space. As this progresses and unfolds, you'll enter into the space. Now I'm in this limitation. I'm curious now, not to necessarily know what it is, but for the sake of curiosity. And then it unfolds and unfolds. And before you realize it, it's becomes really clear there's no such thing as a limitation. At least not when it comes to consciousness. But then we enter into another paradox. Well, still seems to be a body. It's Thich Nhat Hanh said that he would like to have added an addendum to the Heart Sutra. And what he wanted to add was there is no being, which is that infinite sense of consciousness, that everything connected, and there is no non-being. There still seems to be a nose, because we can't deny that there seems to be a nose.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just be as honest as possible. Seems to be a nose, but there's also this other experience that is paradoxically, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
Kind of a strange, weird, fun, exciting life it can be, for sure. But ultimately, getting to a place where you are now, it's kind of a nice space. Even if you are perceiving pain here and there, that space, notice what tends to happen when the perception of pain arises. Is there, even if it's subtle, because it does become more subtle, is there this desire to get away from it? Is this a desire to make it feel better? Or is it just full immersion and you're just swimming in it?
A little bit of both.
Okay. Well, as it comes up, if it comes up, because that's another thing. Are you in pain now?
I can't seem to find any.
Okay, perfect. There is no pain until there's pain, and that doesn't mean there ever will be pain.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there is no pain.
Feels like at a certain point, there isn't really anything to say except what's being said. And that's not really like a pointer. It's more of and I don't know what to say after that, to be honest.
I get you. Yeah, that shows up here a lot too, even though there's a lot of outward language that happens in the sessions with people all day. Some days it's like there's really clearly nothing to say, but there's still not a resistance to when there's a session, words will just start to come out. Okay, that's fine too.
Yeah. It's almost like, I guess the comparison I'd make is when you're talking to someone and you know nothing being said is true, but you're not disengaged.
Yeah. Yep. It's pretty clear. That's it. Engagement, attention, engagement, immersion. And I know these are just words, but there's a sense that you know what that means without needing to rely on the word itself.
Yeah. And then there's like this lack of planning, especially when you listen.
Yeah, what planning is a funny game. It's a game. And here's another thing I could maybe be able to give you. All of this apparent reality that seems very human for us, it's just a game. And the best statement I can give you in that regard is it's only a game when we realize we can stop playing. That's it. So if you play the game, you're playing the game, and you don't have to play the game. There's something magical there. So that's another place we can look at. Preferences. Do you like some things and dislike other things? Whatever it is you dislike, pay attention, because there's identity wanting to linger in that mechanism. If, if things seem really serious in some places, spend some time there. As it arises, you might find something there as well. And overall, anything that shows up as a requirement, if there's a sense of having to do, there's have tos everywhere. Those have tos, spend time there too, because what we're saying on a most fundamental level, and very fundamental, is before I can be right here, right now, I have to do this thing, and this thing. And then after, I can be right here, right now, which is kind of funny.
This all sounds like a disentangling from thought, but not a numbing of thought, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's it. Because thought doesn't seem to vanish, but it can become completely non-perceptible. But it's not like thought disappear. So maybe this is a way to put it. It seems like this universe or this reality is this large space of energy. Just, we can call it vibration. We can call it, we can explain it through, if we want to play thermodynamics, it's all moving from one form of entropy to another form, higher to lower, or lower to higher entropy, right? And essentially, the body seems to be able to perceive this in the form of sensation. So whatever sensation is, it's still a subtle interpretation, but it's also pretty instantaneous, pretty much in the moment, whatever is being felt. And then we have the mind that seems to be able to perceive this energetic space as well, but it perceives it through thought, which for some reason is so reflective, it takes a while to form. And so whenever we're entertaining thought, we're actually kind of somehow positioned in what seems to be a past moment, or pushed away in these buffers from the present. So to disentangle from thought in that way is simply to realize that there's energy happening and you're not in control of that energetic space.
Yeah.
And so sometimes thoughts take on a really strange forms. It's just how it goes. Doesn't matter.
It's been feeling like it's like if you're watching a movie, but you have like the commentary on, but you're paying attention to the commentary and not the movie itself at times. That's like when you're like really stuck in your head.
Yeah, that's pretty clear. It's yeah, some people will describe being, when they're able to notice thought from a distance, or let thought kind of just do what it's doing without being directly identified with it. It's like having music in the background. There's something there, but I'm not stuck on it. I'm not invested in the content.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of like a third space from there where we're able to watch both sensation and thought from a distance. And then that dissolves into no observer at all.
Mm.
No one observing sensation, no one observing thought. But it tends to happen on its own. There's not a lot to do about it. It's a realization that just unfolds kind of naturally.
So it's safe to just say, I can just let that happen on its own and not brute force that. Because
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
And
at the
what you do have a little agency around probably still is if you are noticing a no and there's any sort of yanking from that no, pulling back, recoiling, not wanting to engage with it, then you can remind yourself, and it doesn't even have to be thought oriented. Oftentimes for people, they feel themselves wanting to sink into that moment, sink into the experience. That's just being with whatever is exactly as it is. That's it. It feels like a very subtle shift in attention until attention doesn't shift at all. It's just very wide.
Mm.
I did an interview with are you familiar with Eshwar?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, so we did an interview last week, and he said something that was pretty exact. He said, the rabbit hole is no longer deep, it is wide.
Mm.
And it's kind of a nice way to put it.
That makes a lot of sense, surprisingly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you know, you know, you know, you know, and you might not know why you know. That's kind of the point. If we ever know why, then it's probably being co-opted with thought, because it's attempting to find orientation by referencing something. And anytime something's being referenced, there's a forced separation taking place. This is why it tends to be with self-inquiry. The first question is, who am I? It's actually a very transcendent type of question, because if identity were isolated completely alone in time and space, it would have no answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
The only way identity ever knows what it is because it knows what it is not. The essence of separation, reference itself. So if there's no longer reference, then there's just this.
I don't even have a response to that.
That's okay. Yeah. Sounds like you're in a pretty, coming from a pointer place where there's a seemingly a lot of human beings that are interacted with on a daily basis.
Mm.
I wouldn't mess with anything with where you're at all.
Yeah, I feel like if I try to speed it up, it always makes it go slower.
Yeah, okay, so that whole desire, like here's a statement that might resonate. Desire is just an expression of pain. It's predicated on a belief that there's lacking here. And that's seeking or
Mm.
doing anything means that it's not complete here. So I got to go over there as if that's a separate place anyway to find the thing that will make this complete. It's already complete. How could it not be complete? How could you not be perfect? How could you not be whole already? How could you not be? And the identity might want to come up with a whole bunch of examples, but that will also reveal thoughts as they arise, and it thinks it's protecting us.
Mm.
I'm going to protect you by beating you up.
Mm.
It's a strange mechanism.
It's almost like it's trying to toughen you up when it's not doing anything at all.
There's probably certain very clear and present circumstances where the identity shines. Let's just say a leopard springs out of the bushes and wants to eat you. That
Mm.
mechanism might really shine in that environment. But for the rest of this existence, there's no leopard. There's no leopard anywhere. So when that mechanism is really in charge, what it wants to do is, because it's predicated on have to protect, that it starts to create circumstances in which need to be protected from.
Mm.
That's how driven that mechanism seems to be. But if we watch it drive from a distance, it's like, I don't know, it's like watching a woodpecker peck a tree. It's just a woodpecker being a woodpecker. It's just the mind being the mind. It's just doing what it does. Doesn't mean that I have to get involved in that at all.
Yeah, everything makes a lot of sense. It's just, what do we even, I don't know, was there even a say or talk about when it's like, it's even when it's not clear, like the unclarity is clear. And it's like, there isn't really a problem that things don't make sense.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all. I mean, it seems like this reality can never make sense, not here anyway. I mean, imagine attempting to grasp everything, that literally everything, and understand literally everything, and then simultaneously grasping absolutely nothing. That mind is not designed for such a thing. Just doesn't, it is instantly limited in that space.
Yeah. When you bring up something like that, while it doesn't make sense, there's also that sense of it also makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's thisness. So as these things have been unfolding, um, has there been any major shifts in the relative position in life?
Hmm. In a relative level,
Yeah.
um, I can do things even when the anxiety rises up again.
Hmm.
And there's still the anxiety, but there isn't like the ideas around what's happening.
That's useful. Okay. There might be a little more exploration there in terms
Yeah.
of, um, and it's not that you're missing anything. It's just where attention wants to go. How do you know it's an anxiety? How do you know?
Yeah, if I didn't label it, it's just I wouldn't know what else to call it. It's more like just energy that feels like what I call anxiety.
And what's the general experience with that? Something that you enjoy or something you don't enjoy?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think it really depends on the situation. 'Cause sometimes the energy feels nice,
Hmm.
And other times it just feels like, oh, I need to call on extra energy at this moment specifically.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can just feel a bit weird because going from a little bit to a lot of energy quite quickly, it's
Hmm.
not something I'm used to. Or
Yeah.
rather, it's not something I'm used to and being okay with it until like recently.
Sounds like a nice place. Um, Still, no problems. Nothing's wrong with any of this. Um, you might naturally start to move into being so immersed in the sensation because it maybe it comes up when there seems to be outward living or something dynamic happening. But if it does come up in a space where you have the ability to enter into complete stillness, see if you can just simply allow that whatever those sensations are, whatever the sensation seems to be, to overtake everything. Let it
Mm.
overtake the body and thus the entire universe so that every aspect of reference becomes one thing. And if everything becomes one thing, where's the self?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my practice lately is I'm not really meditating like how I used to. I've been just paying attention to sensation
Mm-hmm.
in and out of meditation. And just there are just times where I only notice the senses, and it's like it's not that thoughts aren't there, but they're very like backgroundy.
Yeah, it sounds pretty nice, man.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like there's any obstacles. And how long has this been going on for you?
In terms of being with the senses, I'd say a few weeks, so not very long.
Okay, cool.
I've also noticed when the senses are dull, it does it at the beginning it kind of bothered me because it felt like I did something wrong.
Oh, I see.
But now it's kind of just, oh, there's just a lack of attention there, but there isn't like the something's gone wrong part.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah. That's gentle. It's nice and soft. And when did you notice like kind of if you could like I know this is still conceptual stuff, but where was there a notice of a demarcation where something shifted?
Is there a specific shift or just in general?
Yeah, I mean, I know you brought up that experience with anxiety and not caring about if you live or die.
Okay. Yeah, I can pinpoint a moment.
How long was that? How long ago was that?
Last May,
Okay, so not that long ago.
yeah, relatively recent.
Hmm. And then were you sleeping or were you on the way to sleep when things started to unfold?
I was meditating.
Okay, perfect. You were meditating in that space. And then what did you notice? Like, was there a place there that something shifted? Was there like an overwhelm and like something like suddenly let loose? What was that like?
It just felt like every spiritual thing I heard that I didn't understand just clicked in like one moment.
Hmm. And then what was the space after like?
It was just like I didn't have to do anything anymore. It wasn't I didn't do anything, just I didn't have to do anything anymore. And it was like that for about 8 months.
Yeah, yeah, that fits. Yeah, as I mentioned before, there's nothing to mess with here. Um, you seem to be in a nice space. There's no strategy. There's no formula anymore, and just allow it to unfold on its own. I think that will be the thing. And you might find here's the best advice that I could possibly give. It's not going to really ever continue to show up in the same way. If it is showing up in a consistent way, just be with it consistently, but don't allow yourself to create some sort of anticipation that it's going to continue that way.
Mm.
And it'll start to get really varied, new, and it really won't ever be the same.
Yeah, sounds like you're really pointing to that. If I get stuck on some level, I'm really paying attention, like up here in my head.
Mm.
At least that's what I'm noticing
Yeah,
in my experience.
it's It's good notice. And still doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that, right? You don't need to even react to that. And it's just gentle moving to the next thing. It's like it becomes almost like a grain of sand in the surf of the ocean. If you were able to be underwater and watch that grain of sand just kind of, and maybe it lands with other sand and then it gets picked up again and it moves. It can be that gentle. And maybe initially that seems turbulent, but it's natural. There's nothing turbulent about it, nothing to push against.
Yeah, I remember at least within the past few months, I kind of noticed I could only do things if I, or at least it seemed like I only did things if I thought them out first. And then I started to notice, wait, I'm not actually thinking first. That's happening after the fact.
That's beautiful.
And if I believe it, and on some level, the thought will actually influence what happens next. But when you stop following thoughts, it's like, well, at first, it was like, how do I even do anything? But now it's just, that's also another thought. And when that goes away, it's just kind of, there isn't really, there's only what's already moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels different because it actually feels like something as opposed to doing something.
I love that. I would really love for other people that have been working here to be able to hear that perspective, because it is a feeling. It really is a feeling. And it's hard to describe the feeling because it's maybe not a feeling in particular, but it's something that's just understood, something that's just known. And that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, it became really apparent because when the whole not being able to identify thoughts with action, like my body kind of just gave up really doing stuff, and I was just, I don't know how to talk about it. It was just this weird limbo zone.
Yeah.
And like I gave up exercise, and then when I tried it again without thinking, it was just, it felt so different that I didn't even know how to like really do what I was already doing before.
Mm.
And then just paying attention to how it felt was just like, it's this, I'm doing the same action, but it's like a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And then like kind of slowly, it's just, I don't need to like perceive of what I'm doing. It can just be here, like whatever's happening.
That's nice. That's soft.
Yeah.
There's such a gentleness there.
Yeah. I've never been to, I'll be honest. When I meditated last year, that was the first time I did it in years.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even want to. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, we don't have to want anything. We don't have to think about it ahead of time. And having that space from that begins to reveal quite a bit. That's it's awesome. What about so like living situation wise, do you have a family? Are you close with other people? What are relationships like?
Well, I'm living at home. I kind of left a job recently, but I'm okay right now. And
Mm-hmm.
in terms of relationships, I have friends and I do communicate with them. And if I do give a bit of like an idea, it's like, so around the time things started shifting and then losing that clarity, there's definitely this sense of I wanted to always be in that clear space. So whenever I was around people and I didn't have it, there's a lot of like internal fighting back.
Mm,
But lately, I'm okay not being in that clarity because it's like when I don't care about the clarity, like that's the clarity in a way.
yeah.
Especially lately when I'm around people, it's like I don't need to be like super like transcendent feeling. It's like I'm a lot more grounded and like transcendent simultaneously, which doesn't make sense, but experientially it feels like that. It's like I'm connected while not like believing in what's happening.
Mm, yeah. That's nice. You may start to see, well, I guess before that, is there any sense of conflict that ever arises? And so it doesn't matter either way, but If so, what's that like?
Okay. If there's conflict, I can feel like energetically disagreement or having boundaries, but
Hmm.
there's a whole like this person shouldn't be doing this part, but I can still like want to get away from them if I feel like it.
Hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So just a gentle pointer here is, um, it might become a lot more effortless to be with others as they are, and be it's going to be very similar to that kind of clarity. Okay, so as you're exploring out in the world, so Adyashanti puts it this way: once we reach the tallest peak of the mountain is when we begin to take the path back to the village.
Hmm.
That's kind of what this part is when it comes to other human beings. If there's any residual stuff there, it's just naturally going to show up, and it will unfold in the same way. There will be a clarity to be with people exactly as they are. And if that internal thing comes up, that's actually still okay. It doesn't matter. If that internal kind of friction seems to arise, just follow your intuition there and be with that too. And I think here's what, because that, in a way, that's still a no, but it's okay. Be with that no so thoroughly that you don't know the no.
Hmm.
Sounds great. Yeah, so it seems pretty clear that, without even defining it, that these shifts are, they're life changing kind of things that happen, and it tends to change on its own and move, and sometimes it can get quiet where it doesn't seem like much is happening there, and then other times it's really full, and it's just continue following this gentleness that seems to be really natural for you. I mean, it's not even really a pointer or advice because you're already doing it. Just just stay.
Yeah. And yet there's nowhere to stay in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like dynamic stillness.
Yeah. You think because all this stuff is like related to meditation, you think stillness is physical stillness, but it's not.
Yeah, it seems like that's where people kind of initially get in touch with it, and then we take it off the mat, so to speak. It begins to incorporate in this kind of effortless flow of life where, there's still stillness there somehow, but and there's still doing happening, but it has nothing to do with I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Trying to stop is doing something.
That's the no. That's There's some insight right there for you. That this is good self-pointing. It's doing something about it. There's nothing to do about anything.
There's it has a flavor to it energetically, and I know it, but at the same time, it's I feel like I can get to know it more, but like it's kind of like getting to know someone. It's gonna take time. I can't if I try to force it, they're probably gonna run away scared.
Well, and I think that intuition's pretty good. Yeah, and maybe it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's something that we settle into. It's almost like when we start to step into a hot tub. At first, it's like ooh, it's hot, and then we just slowly sink into the water, and we get to a point where we're like, yeah, that feels nice. Sounds about right. I mean, yeah, it's something that you will always know, even if it's changing and or doesn't have any form at all. Something somehow is always known about it. And you were talking about that energetic. Yeah, there's something energetic there, and it's not the same exact signature, but it's still recognized immediately. It's so strange. It's paradoxical. It's never the same, yet always known.
Yeah, it's really weird because the way you said that it reminded me a lot of what someone was telling me the other day. Like when they say they're used to it, and my brain kind of just stopped. Like it didn't make sense to me. Like, how do you be used to something?
Right. What does that mean? Uh,
It
yeah.
really felt like the only way you can be used to something if you can remember something. But if you remember, you're already back in your head.
Yeah, it's all conceptual at that space. Yeah. What memory is real?
I feel like when you're in your memories, you don't actually feel much. And if you do, it almost happens kind of reactively to your thoughts.
Seems to be the way it works. Absolutely it. Awesome. And, when it comes to work and things like that, sometimes there can be some small boundaries or hangups around that. Here's probably what you'll find. Opportunities will continue to arise as you just continue to allow. And then there's no effort there either. And then you won't really ever find yourself in a have to job. That's what most jobs are for people, it seems. A have to. Well, now you're no longer in a have to job, yet you're still somehow working or doing whatever. But this is the definition of, or this is the way to look at chop wood, carry water. Before, chop wood, carry water it's like, I don't want to get the water, I don't want to chop the wood, this like resistance. Then after, it's like, yeah, it's just happening on its own. It's just something that's happening.
Yeah, it's like even like if there was like the energy where like there's a moment where like you don't want to chop wood or carry water. There isn't the resistance to stopping the chopping and carrying.
That's it.
You're not comparing stopping and doing because both are kind of gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not stuck in the dilemma of duality itself. And even saying non-dual, I mean, you know, it's not like a state or a position necessarily. It's just the way that reality seems to function.
Yeah, it really feels like it's non-dual in a way that includes duality while not being suckered into it.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, without being suckered into it. That's
Like
fun.
I see those comments all the time of who's doing this, and it doesn't resonate. I mean, I get where they're coming from, but I don't like listen. It's not that I don't like listen. It's more of a. It feels really stuck.
Yeah, it's still taking a position, it seems, right? And there's a fixation there, which means there's a resistance there. Yeah, Angelo usually refers to that as the non-duality police,
Mm.
which is it's just funny because that's also still part of the path. And I think a lot of people, when they really engage in this, they, without realizing it, they replace a sacred cow with another sacred cow, and then they replace that sacred cow with another one down the line. But eventually we get to a point where we look at the sacred cow and be like, wait, is a sacred cow, is it required at all? Does there have to be a sacred cow? Does there have to be a position? Does there have to be a stance? There have to be anything that's consistent? And it sounds like you've already kind of, you don't need the sacred cow.
Mm. I
I
can play along with the sacred cow, and that can be fun, but I don't need it.
Yeah, it's only a game when you realize you can stop playing. So yeah, I can play the game, and but I don't have to. It's a nice place to be. It's yeah, and even like Emerson had said in an interview we had, even that's part of it. Of course, it's all. And when you said duality is part of it, of course it is. Anything that's here belongs.
Yeah,
It's just we don't have to take a stance either way. That's freedom. Taking a stance tends to be so restrictive. And when you say there's nothing to talk about, there's something in that too, because even words themselves are somehow each one a stance, each one a place of finality as we put words together. So when we talk about nothing, like we have been this entire conversation, we talk about nothing in such a variety of ways that it doesn't matter anymore. It no longer means anything.
I remember. I think when I was slightly in that trap, I think what helped a lot was hearing someone say, "Are you free enough to be trapped?"
that's
I
a
was like,
that's a good way
"Oh,
to put it. Yeah. Are you free enough to be trapped? Beautiful. I
And then
love it.
when you allow yourself to be trapped, it's like it's not a trap anymore.
That's it. Oh, okay. That reminds me. I want to read the quote so um, I can share it with you directly. Okay, so this was Fyodor Dostoevsky. He says, "Man is unhappy because he doesn't know that he's happy, and that's all it is."
Mm,
So man is trapped, or humankind is trapped because they don't know that they're free,
mm,
or they don't know that they're not trapped.
yeah.
That's all it is. It's just kind of stepping back from it all. Awesome. Love it.
So I mean, I don't know. There's really nothing to say,
I
and
get it.
yet I keep talking.
I get it. I get it. And I really do appreciate you being here for this. Yeah.
Mm,
I think other human beings could really benefit from hearing that perspective as well. There's a lot of things that naturally kind of intuitively came up, and a lot of people that are kind of in this place that seems like a crossroads in this path. There's really no path either.
yeah,
The path is directly beneath the feet right now. That's it. That's all it is. Doesn't go anywhere and didn't come from anywhere.
yeah. The path is a metaphor, so people know what you're talking about.
And this is all metaphor, and so sometimes it's just best to go completely wide with the metaphor, and then here's what tends to happen. This is such a human experience. Then people look at the metaphor and attempt to apply that fundamentally.
Mm,
And then that's when things get a little sketchy.
yeah, turning an idea into a law.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to make this a permanent experience, verbatim, fundamentally. Yikes.
Yeah,
Read between the lines all the time. Till there are no lines, there are no words, there is no reading. Wow, this was great. Appreciate it.
yeah. I really appreciate it too. I didn't know what I was gonna say, but
Somehow there was things being said, and no idea what was said, but glad it was shared.
yeah, I really come to the point where no idea is pretty nice because I don't gotta figure out if this was good or bad. It's just whatever it was.
Beautiful. Love it. Happy for you. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
it's a
really
very
glad.
shared experience. Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's nice hearing from you.
Yeah, you too.
All
Glad
right.
we got to spend this time together.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'll be going then.
All right. See you when I see you.
Bye.